Hello, I'm Keith. Welcome back to another devlog for my game Doc King. This time I'm talking about playtesting. Why does it matter? When should you do it? Where should you do it? Etc. We're going to be talking about how you can diversify the ways that you test in order to get good feedback. We're going to talk about why the environment that you test in matters. We're going to talk about my personal experience with the Indie City Games event in Chicago, which is where I reside. And then we're going to talk about my opinions and my hot takes. Are all takes hot now? I don't know, but we'll be talking about those. And yes, in the background will be a bunch of video from this playtesting session of different people trying out my game. So I don't know. I think if you're very slick, maybe you can see that there is some patterns in the gameplay. All right, first let's talk about diversifying the ways that you test. There's some variables that are important to feedback data, and I think much like they always say, divest your portfolio when you're investing, I think you should do the same thing with testing for your game. First, you should probably record some people, and you probably should not record others. You want to have both of these. We'll talk about this a little bit more later on my feelings on it, but I think you should probably do both. All of these, by the way, are just because it's probably good to have different types of feedback so that, let's say you did record all of the people playing your game, every single playtester. And then all of a sudden when someone's not being recorded, they feel like more comfortable to make certain decisions in the game and go down certain paths that maybe they would be embarrassed to if they were being watched. Things like that. Okay, the next point. Tell some people the way to do things. You know, your game's going to be in a state when you're playtesting that it's not super intuitive, maybe that you need to go behind this wall to collect this item. Tell some of the playtesters this thing and don't tell some others. That way you can see if maybe they figure it out on their own. Maybe you don't need to tell them. But then if you tell some people and they enjoy that they found that, then maybe you have to somehow either fix that part of the game or include it in your tutorial or however you're teaching players. Okay, next one. If you're struggling with a game design aspect, you could go and split the demo into an A/B test, and you could test the mechanic that you're not sure on. This is a big time-consuming effort. I'd say I probably won't do it at the level that I'm at, but if I ever got up to like a 5-10 person studio, that's some pretty good feedback to have on if the mechanic works, you know. So I think that becomes more valuable the more people that you have and the bigger of a project that you have. Okay, next. Test in person. Go outside, touch some grass, test with real life people in the real world. Also, get some feedback online behind their computer that they feel safe just telling you whatever. These are going to be two different types of feedback. When you watch someone in person, there's a lot more emotion, there's a lot more social cues and visual cues that you can pick up on when they're playing. So that's invaluable. And then, you know, online, all of your reviews are going to be online from someone you don't know probably. So that person matters a lot too. Finally, test with people you know and test with people that you don't know. And the full spectrum. I think test with your mom. See what she thinks. Test with your friends. See what they think. Test with acquaintances. You know, friends of friends. See what they think. Test with people that are into games that you don't know. Test with people that are not into games that you don't know. Try that whole spectrum out. You might learn some things at specifically probably at the ends of the spectrum. Okay, let's talk really briefly about why environment matters. I think that this is a very hard thing to nail down, and I don't know too much about it. All I can really tell you is that I had the experience of putting my game into an environment that people would probably never play that game in. So when I had my game at this recent playtest event, it was pretty chaotic. You know, people were drinking. There was all sorts of games being played all around. It wasn't a huge venue, so it was a little packed. It was fun. It was a good time. It was a good event. My game is really more of a, hey, I'm going to put on my warm blanket around me. I'm going to get a cup of tea in the winter time. I'm going to go sit at my computer and just kind of relax and play this game for a while. So it's kind of an opposite environment. And I actually heard that feedback from people. They said, hey, you know, seems like a nice game. I bet if I was at home and on a Saturday night, and I bet I could really zone in on this and like really get into the atmosphere. But right now I just can't. So that's another variable that can you control for that? I don't know. If you're at one of these events, playtest events, whether that's some festival or a local playtest event, you might not be able to create that environment. If I wanted to, maybe I could construct a cozy type of environment somewhere and try and get people to play that, but I'm not really sure how to do that. So just remember that matters. Okay, so maybe it'll be a little valuable if I tell you about my experience at the event I was recently at playtesting, which was the Indie City Games Showcase, which is a local Chicago event. It was almost all Chicago devs there, which was really cool. It was revolving around the Indie City Games community, which is a great local community in Chicago, and it was just a fun event. Now, I have no experience of going to one of the big events like PAX, but for something like this where it's, you know, maybe 15, maybe 20 games, and let's say 200-300 people coming through that night, it's a great opportunity to meet people. It's a great opportunity to get feedback on your game, all of the above. I would highly recommend doing so if you can. I think it's probably better than, now I haven't been, but I think it's probably better bang for your buck and just maybe even in general better feedback than an event like PAX. You may not be meeting any bigwigs. You might not be meeting any huge developers that, you know, you can rub elbows with, but you're seeing actual people play your game that, you know, might actually buy it because they're just people in the community who like local art, or they're friends of friends, you know, that they support the scene or whatever it is. So yeah, I would definitely recommend doing that, and I got a ton of great feedback from the event, and I'll share a little bit of that later. Okay, so my opinions and takes. I have a few. So I think a bunch of tiny events, let's say that there were 5 events and you got 10 people to try your game at each event. So 50 people total trying your game. I think those 5 events is way better than one large event where you have even 200 playtesters. So even if it's 4 times as many playtesters, I think a bunch of the tiny events is way better for your game. This is because with Doc King, when I showed at the ICG event, there was 1 or 2 issues, which was basically the progression of the game, getting enough money to afford the gear. Those issues stopped almost everybody from progressing in the demo. So basically everybody had the same feedback. Even if they didn't tell me it, I could watch what was happening, which was they just weren't progressing properly in the game. So they were kind of bored or they were kind of wandering around. Now, if I had that at PAX and there's 300 people playtesting it, it doesn't really matter. I'm not getting good feedback because none of them are really progressing to the point that I need them to. So it's much better to have a small event, find those little things, fix them, and then go to the next event. Maybe you'll have a couple more things, find those, fix them. Eventually, you'll probably get to the game to a point where, okay, now I can really see, do people like the progression in this game? Do they like the whole game? So I would, if I were working on my next game, I would look for all of the smallest possible events to get feedback and do all of them. And hopefully it's only a couple hours, so it's not a huge time investment, And this depends a lot on, what is available to you. Maybe these are online playtests too. So just keep that in mind. Okay, my next opinion. I think people change a lot when they're observed. I don't think people act the same when they're being watched. So, it's probably worth doing so, especially if you have a multiplayer game, a little bit. It's probably worth recording and watching them a little bit because, maybe the game will be played that way. Like if there's streamers playing the game, they're being watched, right? So there is a use case for this. But I think in general, outside of the multiplayer game and the streaming thing, you probably want to leave people alone and let them just tell you how their experience was, because that's really how most people are going to be playing the game. They're not going to have, a friend sitting behind them watching them. Again, it depends on the type of game. Okay. Your friends are not good testers. Let me repeat that for everyone in the back. Your friends are not good testers. They are most probably just happy that you're accomplishing something cool, and they want to support you and celebrate that. And that's great. That's what friends are for. They probably won't have much constructive criticism for you. Also, the chances that they are someone who would actually buy your game is probably really low. I mean, the target market for the average indie game is pretty small. It's usually a niche within indie games, and not a lot of people actually buy that many indie games. So, yeah, just treat that feedback with a grain of salt and focus on putting it in the hands of people that would actually play the game, if you can. All right, final opinion is if you don't play test your game, it's probably going to suck. My last game, Wizard Punk, I love it. It was my baby. I know you're not supposed to say that anymore, but it was. I have many babies. Every game is my baby. Anyways, that game could have used a lot more playtesting. A lot more. I really only had maybe 7-8 people play it in total before I released it, and most of them were friends. So yeah, it's almost impossible to see your own game with a fresh set of eyes after working on it for so long. And you just really need to put it in the hands of players and see how they feel. You need to relinquish the control there. Okay, so if you're interested, the feedback I got for Doc King was a long laundry list of things. I'll try and go through it as quick as I can. So some people didn't figure out that you need to fish where a fish exists in the game. There's a little shadow. A lot of people couldn't figure that out, or they didn't see the shadow, so they just tried fishing places. So now I throw up a little warning that says something like, it seems there's no fish nearby. Lots of people loved the mood, the ambience, the graphics, the vibes, so I knew that was working. That was good feedback. The world seems to be built for the main character instead of for NPCs. So I actually went up and I changed the size of the NPCs after that, because this person was totally right. The NPCs were too big for everything, too big for doors and overhangs and everything. I didn't see that before, that sense of scale, so that was good. Stairs are hard to see when they're in front or behind of the player. I'm still working on fixing this issue. It's a perspective problem. It's not clear that the small boxes could be picked up, so I made them a bit more visually distinct. It's not clear that the small boxes were throwable. I don't think I've fixed that yet. need to put this in hands of players again now that there's a bit more of a not a tutorial, but a little bit of a side quest where you're throwing boxes to break them. A lot of people rage quit or got very frustrated when failing carry quests twice in a row, or when falling in the water multiple times during a carry quest. I'm in the process of fixing these. Now, when you fall in the water, you don't fail the quest, so that was a good bit of feedback. The other one I have an idea for. If you're in a heated fishing battle, if you're going back and forth with this fish and the day changes, like if it hits midnight, you go to sleep. So that whole fishing battle is gone. I believe I have fixed that by stopping time now when you're fishing, so you can actually stop time forever in the game if you just have a fish on the line forever. I don't know if long term that'll be my solution or not, but for now that's how I fixed it. Felt like players didn't have enough opportunities to earn coins, so I'm giving them just a better introduction system where they can actually get the fishing rod and the snorkel without having to buy them. So those are now just a part of little quests that you can do, and some other things. So yeah, that was all the feedback I got, and those are the fixes I've done so far for it. So very good, very positive. My last thing to say is take notes at these playtesting sessions. Very important to take notes. That way you can fix all the things later. Okay, thank you very much for listening. Go wishlist stocking. Goodbye.